Today's guest is none other than Brett Barley. He really needs no introduction. He's one of the most accomplished barrel riders and surfers to come from the East Coast. We talk about strike missions around the world with O'Neill, growing up on the Outer Banks, dealing with storms and hurricanes, the community of the Outer Banks, and some incredible swell stories. To see a lot of the imagery that we talk about, make sure to subscribe to Brett Barley's YouTube channel and to follow on Instagram. This is a really great episode, so I hope you enjoy.
Marshwear. Clothing inspired by the need for versatility and style. Those wave chasing, flats pulling, field loving, campfire gatherers. For the doers, adventurers, and unconventional. For those who live by the highs and lows of the tides. For those in pursuit of good times.
Mex One Coastal Cantina. It seriously is my spot for incredible tacos and margaritas. So when they wanted to support the podcast, I couldn't have been happier. My go-to has always been the Bangin' Shrimp Bowl. It truly is the perfect surf-inspired beach bar. They're locally owned and always in support of the surf community. They always have surf videos on, so I feel right at home. Everything from tacos, quesadillas, Baja bowls, fresh salads, cold beer, and margaritas, everything is delicious. With 3 locations in Charleston, Mex One has you covered. I knew that if I came to the Outer Banks, the waves were probably going to be good, and then we would have never lined this up.
Yeah.
So thanks for hopping on here to do it.
Yeah, no worries.
I have a couple icebreaker questions just to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
All right. This first one's kind of like a would you rather superpower, but Brett Barley version. So would you rather your car be able to be invisible or you could check 2 spots at once?
I'd rather my car could be... Well, is it just my car or can my filmer's car be invisible too?
Yeah, I'll include that.
Yeah, invisible cars. Because I'd check in spots. I mean, it would be nice to be able to check 2 spots at once. There's definitely been times where I've wasted time just because it was like I would stay somewhere so long that because I didn't want to go to the next spot, and then I'd end up going anyway and then driving back. But man, if I could have, if I could not be seen on the side of the road, that would save me so much headache.
Yeah, and then especially the winter time, checking spots like that day is just winding down.
Yeah. I mean, but again, I feel like I have such a good idea of where I want to be. And honestly, recently, we don't have that many spots worth checking. But for my whole life, people see my truck and pull over. And then all of a sudden it goes from no one out to 20 guys out. That I would love to avoid that.
Yeah. I kind of knew that would be your answer. But and then the next one is if you did have to live anywhere else in the world and it's not the Outer Banks, where would it be?
Dang. That was pretty hard. Honestly, like when I think of where I live, a lot of that revolves more around my family than it does waves. But obviously, like there's got to be waves too. If I had to live somewhere else, I would have to say the North Shore of Hawaii. I love that it, aside from the waves, it's like small community, everyone knows each other, tight knit, all that, super supportive of each other. Things are good, things are bad. There's always people there. But then obviously there's like, you got Pipeline, you got Rockies, there's always surf. It wouldn't, it's hard for me to imagine living anywhere besides where I do. But if I had to move, I couldn't imagine moving anywhere else besides the North Shore, probably.
Yeah, it wouldn't change too much for you, but it would at the same time. But you could still film and
Yep, could still do everything. And my family thrives there. My kids do, my wife does. Like that for me is kind of more important. There's like other places I could selfishly pick out because of the wave or something, but even for myself, I do enjoy the North Shore community.
Yeah, that's awesome. So anytime I tell someone I'm from South Carolina, like if I'm traveling, they're like, "Oh, the Outer Banks," and I'm like, "Well, that's about 8 hours from where I'm at."
Yeah.
And then now even more awkwardly, we have the Netflix show OBX.
Yep, that's been a big question since that came out.
But yeah, the show is filmed here, but it's titled OBX. How does that sit with everybody there?
I don't think too many people love it. It's nothing like here. I've never actually seen it, in full disclosure. I heard that as like a, fictional show, it's cool. You could get into it, but to me, I'm just like, what was the even point of naming it the Outer Banks? You could have named it anything.
Yeah.
It has helped tourism, but almost to like, we're like over an overabundance of people coming in now. But a lot of this place revolves around the tourism industry, so it's not, bad press. Any press is good press, I guess. But yeah, it's really funny when people think that it's, the show is anything like here, and obviously it's not.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And people come, they're probably expecting to see Charleston, so it's super confusing.
Yeah. Or end up in, what are they like ferry to the middle of the state or something. Like,
Yeah.
Just so funny to me, stuff like that. I'm like, you could have at least like made it kind of like here, and then it would have made sense. But I don't know, to not even film it here and it literally have nothing to do with here, but then be named after here. I was just like, that's so. It'd be like if you like wrote a fictional book about, some sort of crazy whatever and named it like Los Angeles, but it had nothing to do with Los Angeles. There was no city. There's no, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just wouldn't make sense. So.
Even kind of like if like the North, they called it North Shore, and it just was not there.
Yeah.
So I did have the privilege to be able to come up there, even though it's pretty far away, and film with you. And you and your family were super great hosts. But like we were saying earlier, that was the one thing. Say the swell's not perfect, you do a lot of driving to find the right spot. And has Surfline ever poached you to be a forecaster? Because that was one thing I noticed is you were dialed in.
Not poached me. They have like asked just for help with like reports. They haven't asked in a long time because they basically know my stance on like, I don't want to tell anyone anything. Even to the point where like, I actually just told a friend of mine the other day, like, I got an email that was like asking if I could clean the cam, and I was like, no. Like, I'd rather there not be cams.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. I may have it like dialed in the sense of like what I'm looking for, but I'm also not good, like when it comes to forecasting. Surfline's job's hard is because you have to make a forecast for like the general area. And so, longer period, shorter period, different swells, north swell, south swell, whatever. There's so many factors that go into like predicting that size height for the whole area. Whereas like I kind of know what numbers will make certain zones of the island like tick, like bigger or smaller. And I'm almost like more OCD. I can't necessarily read maps in that sense. I just know, all I need to know is that there's going to be size and what period range it'll be, and I know what spots to go to. And I could care less whether it's 8 feet or 10 feet. I know it's going to be big enough to have fun. And I'll pack an array of boards that, whether the swell over delivers or under delivers, I'm prepared. The forecasters have to be like so specific. I would never want that job, even if someone did offer whatever. Like I don't know how those guys do it. I've talked to Kurt Corte about it before, and hats off to those guys for being able to do their absolute best to like read all the numbers, predict what the storm's doing, and give like an idea of a swell height. And people want to criticize Surfline all they want, but everyone that wants to criticize them doesn't have a clue what to look at either, or they would have a better idea of what the swell's doing.
Yeah.
Like when I see Surfline's forecast and it's off a little bit or something, or off for whatever reason, I can like dive in and maybe try and figure out why it's off or understand why. And I hear people just like roast them, and I'm like, well, no, but it actually, it should have performed higher. It should have been bigger, or yeah, it should have been smaller. I don't know how it was bigger. You know, it's hard. It's like we have to look at storms that come from overland out into the water, whereas like pretty much the rest of the world has storms that are in the ocean and push swell towards land. It's like it's got to, the East Coast has to be one of the hardest places to predict swell. So yeah, I mean, when those guys get roasted by people at the beach, I just laugh because I'm like, dude, you go do it then. You don't need Surfline.
Yeah, seriously. How was this winter for you guys? I know like you get so much focus during hurricane season, but you guys have a lot of storm activity in the winter. What was this winter like?
This winter's been decent. I wouldn't say it's been really good. You know, we've had quite a bit of swell. It's kind of, I was telling someone the other day, seems like we get 2 or 3 weeks of waves and then 2 or 3 weeks without waves. It's kind of been like when I was just looking yesterday at footage and what dates I had and whatnot, and I was like, oh wow, we haven't had waves in like almost a month. Not like good waves. And you know, the January into February run was enough that like you're like, oh, winter, but then you're like, oh yeah, there was 3 weeks after that. And typically in El Nino years, we have pretty good runs in January and in March, and we have more often have nor'easters. And this year's been a lot of south swells or easterly swells. It has not been a typical El Nino. Like going into this season, I was really excited. I was like, this could be, you know, something exciting. And after seeing what went down in Jersey and even the big swells we had those same times in December and January, I was thinking like, oh, we're going to have some really powerful storms. And Jersey basically got the gist of it. We actually, that first swell, it was massive here, but all of our sandbars are terrible. I mean, they're the worst I've seen ever. Like to be able to drive around when the wind's howling offshore and find nowhere to surf was pretty baffling. You know, it was huge. Like there were 20-foot face waves out in the ocean, but it was just the sand's bad. And so, yeah, it's been kind of hit or miss. We've had some good days, but it hasn't been maybe what we would have expected. So
one thing I've wanted to know from you is obviously everyone on the East Coast experienced storms, but you guys really do. What's riding out a storm on the Outer Banks really like? Like, can you kind of describe the vibe? Or it really, I know every storm is so different.
Yeah, it's you know, I think it's one of those things you kind of settle into. We live on a sandbar, we stick way out in the ocean, and we take the brunt of all the weather. So it's just like one of those things that you just know at some point you're going to have to deal with it. Like you said, when it's hurricane season, you know, when we haven't had a storm in a few years, and it's been really nice. And I think what's good is, you know, when we get a 3 to 5 year run without getting hit, kind of gives everyone time to get caught up. Cause you know, when people get flooded like that, sometimes it takes years for them to get back to normal. And so we've had enough time. You know, more houses have gone up after the past storm. So it's like each time I think it's like a little bit less of an issue. But it definitely takes, you know, just kind of grit to deal with that. Like, you know that at some point it'll come. I'm fortunate where I live. We don't get flooded, but it's one of those weird things where in those times when we do get hit, and you know, everyone comes together in the community, the fire stations act as hubs in the villages that are flooded to, you know, people that want to volunteer and help show up. You can get sent to go clean, whether that's just with like cleaning supplies and like wiping mold out or wiping counters or whatever, wiping floors. You can get sent to go do tear outs. So you're like ripping out, you know, they'll break up into groups. You have guys that'll rip out the inside of houses. You have guys that'll rip out the outside of houses, depending on your skill level. And people that go and clean up yards, just like picking up debris and stuff. And so it's rad when the community does come together. It's this weird feeling where in the worst of times, it's like you're the most proud of where you live. everyone is there for each other. Everyone's like pulling over, like, hey, do you need a hand? Like asking questions, checking in on each other, passing each other at the store, sharing stories of where you've been that day, what you saw, and just helping out your neighbor. And that's what life really is about, is like about community. And so in those times we get to experience that. And it's not cool, it's not good, but it is cool to see that side, because then when things get rolling again, everything's good. Like everyone's doing their own thing, running their own business, whatever. And so it is a way that it brings the community together. And then, aside from hurricanes, we have the nor'easters, and it's like, you just get stuck here. It really isn't so bad during nor'easters. We do get some flooding. We have been honestly underwater quite a bit this year, probably more so this winter than we have in the last like 3 or 4 winters. Getting flooded in Avon and Rodanthe, and then other storms flooding Frisco and Hatteras. There's just been a lot of tide. But that's just a way of life. It's like something everyone's used to. When it's going to blow a certain direction at a certain speed, tide's going to come up. And so people move their cars, people get prepared. The nor'easters that wash out, the road and stuff, that's where kind of the bigger issue comes in, where as far as like severity, like medical wise, like it's a big deal to not be able to just like, if something happens, get to the hospital within 45 minutes. That process gets longer. I know we have had ones where ambulances were heading off like while it was flooding, and one got stuck, and then the rescue 4x4 truck shows up and they have to transport them and take them off. It's pretty gnarly. But it's just part of life here, I guess. And so luckily this year, like I said, we haven't had a lot of nor'easters, so not much overwash. So we have been grateful for that.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. That's what I was going to say. 'Cause I do remember those times of when you were in homes, helping these people who lost everything, but that goes a long way.
Yeah, it's weird how it's like, it's not my favorite time, but it's my favorite time to see the community come together like that. And I don't know, it's special even in the dark times. So
yeah, no, that's well said. Well, how far back do your roots go to where you are? And then, because your dad was surfing there, like how long ago?
Yeah, so him and my uncle moved here. They're from Chesapeake, Virginia. They moved here straight out of high school, 18 years old. They were out. And I'm not sure what year exactly he moved here. I guess it was in the 70s, sometime in the 70s. And they moved here, and they were just like, doing construction, working for people and stuff to get by. And then they had a offer to buy some land here. And they actually moved away for like a year to work these like 2 construction jobs. Like my dad said that they were working nights, weekends, like 7 days a week to earn enough to be able to come back and like buy the property, and bought the property. And then when they bought it, it was just woods and stuff. So they had to like clear it. And then when they built the house, there was no road, stuff like that. Like they've been here a long time. And the reason that they came here was to surf. Like they grew up coming down here to surf from Virginia. And so their desire to move here was to surf and to go fishing and be a part of the life down here. And it's been cool. So the road I live on is the same road where they moved 50 years ago, whatever it was, 50 years ago. And now we're still here. My dad's still on the same road, and it's pretty special to know that like, he's been here that long, and now I'm raising my kids here. And currently at 11 years old, in all of his wisdom, my son wants to live here forever. But yeah. As you get older, things priorities change. So we'll see how that is. But it's cool to see that lineage kind of begin, because prior to my dad, we didn't have family here. I don't come from a long line of locals here, and it's not like I have a family cemetery. I have some friends who have family cemeteries here, and their lineage is like so deep.
Wow.
And mine's not like that, but it's cool to think that my dad started it and I'm continuing it, and we'll see what my son and my daughter do.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of stories has he told you about, like, who was pioneering the surf scene back then?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, as far as the guys I know, it's guys like Kevin McCabe and Russell Blackwood and Scott Busby. those were like the main guys around here. Ted James, and my dad was intermingled amongst all of them and friends with them and stuff. But yeah, Kevin McCabe's Mr. Lighthouse for a reason. All those guys, they would like go to Mexico and go surfing and in the summertime, and just grew up loving to surf here and stay here. And I'm trying to think. I don't know, like, I know I'm probably leaving names out too, but I don't know. Quite a few of those guys aren't originally from here either. So sadly, now that I think about it, I'm going to have to ask some of them.
Yeah.
But like, who of that crew, if any, were from here? I don't know. I would have to try to think. But I know all those guys that I named moved here.
Yeah.
But so.
No, it's just cool to imagine what it was like back then.
I feel like my dad shares more stories of just kind of like the everyday life. Like he said, every day after work, everyone would drive out to the point and get together and hang out. And, they would have like big bonfires out there and stuff. Like it was way more the Wild West than it is now. Stuff like there was only one cop on the island. And so like when they would all go to the movies, it was like the whole, bunch of people at the movie. And when the movie, the officer was there, he was watching too or whatever. And when the movie would let out, like some people would leave a little early and then they would like race back to Hatteras and stuff. And my dad said that him and some guys they would leave early to go up on the dunes in between Avon and Buxton and watch the guys race by. Like full, like, hearing that. So the cops like somewhere else on the island, they call each other and then they get a race together and race cars. Like just wild stuff. It was really cool. Like there was a lot, seeing photos and stuff. There's a lot more pine trees. It was way prettier, obviously less built up. I mean, it's like more built up now, even for me to see around compared to when I was little. But hearing the stories my dad tells of like in Avon, he said there wasn't a single house south of Avon Pier. He said when you drove into Avon, it was just woods. And then once you got around the piers where the houses started for Avon Village. So it's pretty wild to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. Those houses are massive now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's hundreds of houses set now south of there.
Yeah. And then how about the guys? And I know there's some obvious names, but the guys that you really looked up to when you were coming up?
Locally?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, out at the lighthouse, it was I felt like I always looked up to guys like Jeffrey Midget, Jason Andre, Joey Crum, even though Joey wasn't like a whole lot older than me. And then Eric Dotson, Kevin McCabe. Those were like guys that I was always kind of keeping an eye on when there were swells or wanted to like get waves like they did. And, aside from that was like more specifically at the lighthouse or in Buxton. And then, just kind of locally, like obviously Noah Snyder and Jesse Hines, Matt Beecham, Billy Hume, like seeing these guys who had made a career out of surfing from the Outer Banks, even though they weren't from Hatteras, like I felt separated from them. And I didn't really grow to have a relationship with those guys until I was like mid-teens and later. But it was cool to see that like, hey, these guys did it. So like maybe I could do it too. And, but it was like being down in Buxton and separated from that. It was, still the local guys that were the ones that I looked up to more as far as just wanting to, seeing their place in the lineup and one day wanting to have that same feeling in that same place.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And not be the kid that's like getting yelled at to paddle out because I don't want to paddle out because it's big and I'm scared.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how you really get better is the people that you see like 10 feet away from you every day.
Yeah. 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 And honestly, like by the time I was like maybe 15, when I kind of started clicking into like wanting to charge more, it was mostly just me, Cash Barris, Morgan O'Connell, and Joey Crum, like pushing each other. Like we were the four guys that surfed no matter what it was like. Like if it was 8 to 10 foot and onshore, we'd be paddling out north of the jetty and drifting down, trying to get a wave. Like, Jason Andre was one of those as well, but he moved, I think, when I was 15 or 16. And so it was like, that crew of like 4 or 5 guys through my teens that like really pushed me. It was my peers. It wasn't, the older guys. Like now that I'm older, I'm like, I actually see the kids like Kai Weska, Dylan Waters, and those guys that are always surfing even when it's like bad wind and stuff. And now I'm like, well, I'll wait until it's clean. So it's like pretty funny. It's kind of come full circle where, now I understand like when I was younger, why it was only like 4 or 5 of us that would surf on those days. And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, it's because the other guys were like, I'll just wait until it's good. Like I already did that. If it's good enough, I'll still surf when it's on shore because like you can still get drained. But yeah, it was pretty cool. So like at that age, it was more so my peers. Like once I kind of started getting into that, just like it didn't matter how big it was, like we were out, and it didn't matter how messy it was, like we were out. So those were my guys.
Pretty sure, yeah. It was one Easterns. I was there, and you definitely were the only person out. And I was like, not even a chance. But yeah, it was pretty heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like now that I'm older and I have kind of a more safety cautious mindset as far as like, is this worth going out or not? I look back at some sessions I had when I was like late teens, early 20s that I'm like, whoa, dude, that wasn't very smart. Times where I paddled out where it's like 10 to 12 foot, maybe bigger off the jetty, just super heavy, raging current. You're paddling out and there's like 2x6s in the lineup that from debris that washed down from the erosion from the storm. And I'm by myself. I remember specifically one time I called Daniel Pullen to come watch me just so that I had someone with me because it was like to a certain level, I didn't feel uncomfortable doing that by myself. But this one day was really big and super heavy. And I just was like, at this point, I was getting a little older. I was maybe like 23. I was like, you know what? I think I should probably have someone here in case something happens. And so he came to watch it, but I still paddled out before he got there. I got my best wave before he got there.
Dang.
And then, but yeah, there was a lot of solo sessions that happened in my teens and early 20s as like my friends went to college and I was pursuing, had like building off this career that I'd started in surfing. And there wasn't really a younger generation coming up. And so I was like just pushing myself so hard. Like I was out there no matter what. And there's definitely some times in hindsight that I'm like, whoa, it's a good, at least I'm okay. But man, if something went wrong, that would have been it. Like no one around.
Yeah. Yeah. The ocean is no joke.
No.
Dang.
I will say there have been a couple times where I got out and specifically one time I got out and as I was on my way out, like a pier piling went by and I was just like, dude, like,
wow,
you get knocked out. It was like, I basically got out and then this huge wave came. It was like one of the like only 3 days I've ever seen like a 20-foot face wave make it towards closer to the beach. And I saw this wave and I was on a shortboard. Like back then I didn't even ride step ups. I was riding just shortboards. And I got out and I saw this set come in. I was like, what am I doing? And I literally just waited for like a lull and just started paddling to the beach. I was like,
wow,
it's not worth it.
Jeez. Kind of on that in a recent post, you said that 2016 winter storm, was it Mars?
Yeah, Mars
was the best day that you've witnessed. I remember because Fisher Heavily was there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then y'all had the ski out, and that was mainly to shoot photos. Yeah.
So we had the ski. I bought the ski in 2012 with the goal of getting a cover of Surfing Magazine and Surfer Magazine. And so I would rotate between the times we used it. Either Daniel Pullen would be on it or Matt Lusk would be on it. And just for the sake of like trying to make it fair, it was just like, okay, you get this day, you get this day. Because the days where we tried to switch, then it was like weird because one of them would get the better part of the session, the other one would get the worst. And it was like, it was just easier. Like, all right, this is your turn, this is your turn. And Fisher and I's, both of our goal was to get these photos. And it was kind of like in the transitional phase of being like surf media becoming more video focused than photo. But it's still for us, and our job was pictures. And so bought the ski. Him and I partnered up with our friend Matt Munden. So there was 3 of us to practice. Like we would just go and practice driving, practice picking each other up, learn to get better at driving, and learn to put the ski in the spot so that we could get the shot. And so having Fisher as a partner, being like such a good surfer, he was really confident to like, him and I could both put the ski in some pretty like, vertical spots, knowing that we'll make it over and the guys could shoot. And so when the Mars swell came, we hadn't really lined up. Like we'd had a couple decent days come together, but nothing magical. Like the Black Friday swell in 2012 was the biggest surf we'd driven in, but it was really messy, like east swell. And Luss got a crazy photo of Jesse Hines, but I didn't get a single shot. And I'd spend most of the day driving because I was just nervous and didn't want the ski to get flipped. And then we had a couple other days that were like clean and pretty, but not like raw and gnarly. And then when this swell came, we had just found this sandbar like 10, 12 days before. And it was holding like 12 at 15 seconds, I think. 12 feet, 15 seconds. And so I was just like, whoa, we found somewhere that can hold long period. Like, when are we going to get to see that again? And if we do, like, I want to have the ski ready. So when the winter storm Mars swell came, the day before was actually like 19 at 17. Like, it was literally whitewater to the horizon. Like, it was just whitewater everywhere. There was nowhere that there was like a bar. It was just whitewater. And we had the ski ready the next morning. It was pumping offshore winds. And we're like, if it's on, like, we're just going to launch it and take the ticket. Because, like, we always launched where it was legal, which meant for like a gnarly ride to get to where we were surfing. And that day it was just like, look, if we get a ticket, like I've never had a ticket, I'll just pay the ticket. It's like basically like a surf trip. And we pulled up that morning and it was perfect. And it was huge and it was perfect. And we're just like, this is it, it's on. So we fueled up the ski, or we topped it, some cans off or whatever, and went and launched it. I remember when we were launching it, it was like, shore break was like 4 or 5 foot. There's a photo someone took of us pushing it into the water, and this like shoulder high waves just like lurching onto the sand. We're like, so gnarly. We get out and everything's good. And then I start the day off horribly because in like being so quick, I put the lanyard on my left hand, which you should always have it on your throttle hand. I mean, nowadays, like with the Sea-Doos and stuff, you click it to your life jacket so your hands are free. But I had it on my left hand. And I'm driving, and I'm in front of this like 8 to 10 foot wave that's just like kegging, like perfect barreling left. I'm coming up, I see Joey and Fisher and the guys on the dune just like with their hands up, and I'm in front of this wave, and I put my hand up like, yeah, and it pulled the lanyard and shut the ski off. I'm like, why did it turn off? And then it hits me and flipped it. And I flipped like holding on to it, and I tried to like grab the seat, and it did like a barrel roll, and I slid off the rescue sled, and I came up and it was right side up. And then the next wave just like barely caught it, and it went into the trough, and it never flipped again. Climbed on, it fired right up, and then we ended up having like, I've never seen it that good all day long. Like even at dead low tide, it was a little shut down. It got a little hard even with the ski, but we would basically, it was me, Fisher, like Jesse Hines, Dana Quinn. I want to say like Cash Bears came out at one point. I'm trying to remember who else. Matt Munden. Anyway, and the thing that was a little hard was we had so many guys that I was like towing with the ski that it would take so long to go up the beach, because there was like 3 dudes on the top and then 1 on the sled, like 4 people just like bah. Wow. And what we would do is we would go about a mile up the beach, drop them off, come back, pick up 2 other guys, go drop them off, and then the crew would drift while the ski just did circles with like trying to shoot photos. And it was insane. Like, I think a day like that, if we didn't have the ski out, there might have been a couple waves ridden, but very minimal. And it was the amount of opportunity that we got that just made it insane. And like I made like multiple waves that were double overhead or bigger. And then in the evening, I was content, and I was driving Fisher because Fisher hadn't had like a crazy one. And he had like a couple it was also cold. We were doing this in February, and he had a couple tries, and it was like the sun was just about to start going down. And he was just like, dude, I'm done. Like, he got really worked a couple times. He was just freezing. And he's like, I'll drive you. I was like, you sure? And he's like, yeah. He's like, we were on this peak, and I'd kind of, because I'd been watching him, like, knew, like, okay, you need to kind of come in like a different way to the way it was ledging up. And so he convinced me to surf again. We're like running out of light. And I was like, all right. And he drops me off, and he sets up, and literally like instantly this bomb comes. And I was just like, this is it. And so I was on a 6'4", and just went head down, paddled so hard. And that wave, as well as like a wave at off the wall, and only like 2 or 3 other waves in my life, do I remember paddling and like feeling like the wave was just like above me, and I'm paddling like down the face, where like instinctually you want to jump up, but I just knew like if I jump up, I'm not going to make it. I was like, you have to get down the face. It was real windy offshore, and I ended up like just knifing her the lip and into this big tube, and Les got a sequence of it, and Jeffrey O'Neill got the clip from the beach, and it was like, bam, golden hour, like just the most insane way at the end of the day. Although it ended worse than that, which is like a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Bringing the ski in, but yeah, it was like, I've never seen it like that even since. And I don't doubt that it could, but the sand has changed, and the swell, we just haven't had a swell that did it like that one did, where it was just so good at dawn, so good till dark. Like, it was insane.
Wow, that's really cool. And there's only a few waves that you can remember, like the paddle in.
Yeah.
It's so distinct.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, and what's funny was, so that was 2016. I guess the other wave I had just gotten maybe a couple months before that in Hawaii at Off the Wall, where like I was paddling, and I was paddling so hard, or they might have been flipped, I forget, but basically I had realized that I caught this wave, whether it was the wave at home or the wave at Off the Wall was first, and realized like I had to paddle so hard and so early and be like so underneath it. It just went against all like instinct, but I made him. And so then I was like, okay, like that's just, when that wave comes, like that's kind of the level you got to go to, is like, I got to put myself in the spot that doesn't make sense. And then that's how you make it. Because if you're like taking off on top, like it's over.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, on the ski stories, I remember an old video, you guys were doing outer bar stuff, and you've made like a whole, but you guys did one this fall.
Video is really funny.
Yeah.
I like look back, and it's just like a bunch of horrible interviews, and like almost no footage of us actually using the skis. There's some pictures, but that was all Will Scudin and Joey Crum. They had been training for a day like that, and the day finally came. I remember helping them launch the ski, and then they went to tow the outer bar, and Morgan O'Connell and I were surfing the inside, because I just wanted to get barreled. Like the outer bar wasn't barreling, but the inside was like double overhead, and there was crazy ones. And they came in and got Morgan, and Will was like, "You're next." And I was like, "I don't want to, I'm good." But they got Morgan, and I'm like, well, shoot, if he went, like I gotta go. And so then when Will came back in to get me, I was like, okay. And he took me out and whipped me into a couple. I had one really long hold down. He whipped me into this one that closed out. I remember straightening out, and I just felt the water coming above me, and I just like took a couple breaths and jumped over. So it was like a controlled wipe out, and it was like I got drugged for so long. But yeah, that was huge, and that was super cool. It's like, honestly, it's one of those things where we get waves that big most years. There's just no one that goes out there and surfs them, because it's like they're not barreling. It's a lot of work. I don't know. I've kind of in the last like year and a half or two thought, it would be cool to like take the Sea-Doos now that I have a couple of them, and I have like guys that can film, like Jeffrey and Cody Hammer, and go out there just for the sake of like riding a couple big waves, just to show people that it is like there. I mean, they're not huge. It's like, but it's still like 20 to 25 foot faces, and it isn't like an anomaly for it to happen. It's just, none of us go out there because it's not barreling. And we're like, oh, it's good. Like tomorrow's going to be barreling, like I'll rest today. And it takes so much energy to surf here when it's big and good, that like I don't want to wear myself out the day before the good day to go ride some like mushy wave.
Yeah.
But just for the sake of showing it, I kind of have been thinking about it.
Yeah. But yeah, you're like, the next day is going to be so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that.
You
But
can only
y'all
spend
had
yourself so much.
y'all had a pretty cool mission this fall. Was that with Corey?
Yeah, so that was just that wasn't super big. It was just really long period swell, and when you get those long period swells, it's like there's not, especially the east southeast. There's really nowhere that holds it, and so him and we had heard of some guys that were doing step offs at a sandbar the day before, and him and I were like, well, I told him, I was like, do you want to go tomorrow? Like, we could take my Sea-Doo and we could go, and he was like, why wouldn't we? Like, what else are we going to do? Like, maybe get one wave somewhere else. Like, let's go just do some step offs and have some fun. Like, make it, something different. I was like, all right. And so I had everything together, but we still checked some spots where we had hoped to surf, and nowhere was doing it. So it was just like, all right, game on. So we went and launched it, and him and I went out. He brought his son Luke because he wanted to get him into a big one. And so, yeah, I stepped him off into a few. He got a super good one. And then we switched, and I got a couple. It was really, really slow, though, like super inconsistent. And there was probably like 5 like PWCs out there. So it was like, waiting, taking turns, and then like a good one would come, or maybe 2. And it wasn't like all time, but it was really pretty, like no wind, not a drop of water out of place. And the couple good waves were sick. It was just fun to do something different. But it pretty much reassured me that like staying and hunting like the one crazy one when we're paddling is still more worth it to me.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It was a cool clip.
Yeah, it was just like the water was so blue too. Like that just, that stuff doesn't really happen that often. So
now that you're riding a lot more different boards, do you think that do you wish you would have been doing that? Or do you think riding one type of board as you're coming up is more beneficial?
I think what I had with Super Brand when it was in its prime and things were going well, and I was working with Jason Coons and Brian Brown, was incredibly special and incredibly pivotal to my like performance and progression, because I had a brand that was just like getting me boards when I needed them. I had shapers that I could just tell like, this is what it felt like and this is what happened. They'd be like, okay, like we'll change this or add this or whatever, or give me insight, like maybe you should go a little wider or whatever. I kind of wish I got more OCD about dialing in my equipment. I basically got to a point where I was like, this is good, and then just like ordered the same dims and everything for like 5-6 years, and like maybe went up in my width like a little bit. But so they knew that I like was like, this is what I like, and it was working. I was getting like, good clips and photos and stuff. So, I think looking back, I could have taken more advantage of that to get a better dialed quiver. But in saying all that, now hopping on all these different brands, from Paizel to Lost to Merrick or whatever, it's really cool to see the difference in builds and how each shaper peels off the foam differently. Like the Merricks definitely have a little bit boxier rails. The Paizels are way more knifey, and it's cool to have a quiver that I feel like I'm dialing. I'm still working on it. I haven't done a great job at ordering customs from each brand to dial in. I'm mostly just grabbing boards off the rack and riding them. It's cool to see like the Paizels, to me, I kind of am clicking with those the most. I feel like because they work the best in like powerful surf compared to the other brands. And then on the days when we have like more softer rippable waves, like I really am loving like the Merricks and the Losts, and to hop back and forth. And so aside from all that, the main thing is that I'm just hopping on boards that I wouldn't typically hop on dimensionally, whether it's, looking at the volume and being like, oh, it's too big or it's too small, or looking at the width and be like, oh, it's too wide. And so then I'm doing it and I'm like, oh, that actually felt really good. And I'm seeing these things click where I'm like, dang, I was on too small of a board before, or maybe I could have like gone a little bit longer, or maybe I could have gone wider or whatever. And so it's been super cool to kind of, at a point, when I was So it's been 2 years now that since I switched over to and rode all these different brands through real water sports. It's been cool to kind of reignite my like desire to dial in a board or understand a board. It's been really fun to hop on weird stuff, and like as you can see back here, I got like a Christensen and a Reese Cole and stuff, like super bizarre boards compared to what I normally ride, and learning how to draw lines on those I think actually ends up helping when I hop back on a high performance shortboard and draw out lines. And boards that I've gotten that I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like that. Like the Slater Designs FRK Plus. I picked that thing up. I was just like, it just didn't. It felt too small. It was a little too small, but it just wasn't a board I saw myself liking. But then when I rode it, it had like this X factor going on where I was like, oh, that was actually pretty cool. And so instead of being like so closed-minded about surfboards, it's like helping me open up to thinking like, okay, well, I don't know everything and maybe I'm wrong about stuff. And then understanding like what maybe I want as I dial in my quiver going forward. And yeah, it's been good.
That's cool. And then I know you were riding foil boards a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Are you still hopping on that? And have you ever tried kiteboarding and just gone full kite Lenny?
I have never tried kiteboarding, and it's really ironic because I live in the world's #1 destination to learn to kiteboard here in Maui. But I think here is better because we have the sound. It's just like waist deep for like miles.
Yeah.
So technically for learning it, yeah, it's like, yeah, and I ride for Real. I've ridden for them for like 9 years now. I've never tried kiteboarding, but I did get into foiling. I loved it. I had fun. In all honesty, the main reason I didn't do it more, and I still don't, is because to fit it in my truck with other stuff, I had to take the foil apart.
Oh God.
As lazy as that is, like for me, life is more about ease of use. Like I'm more likely to go fishing if I have rods in the truck and tackle ready. I'm more, inclined to just go hop out and have a session in bad waves if I have a board that has fins in it and it's in the truck and, I happen to be at the beach.
Yeah.
And the same thing with foiling. So because of the lack of ease of use and having to put the thing together and break the thing down and like get it right and set up all the time, I didn't do it as often. And I still have it. I enjoyed it, but honestly, between like editing, like I spend a lot of time at the computer between editing, surfing, and then my family and fishing. I'm like kind of tapped out on hobbies. Like if I didn't have fishing, I would 100% foil. But instead I'm like, well, I won't foil today. I'll just fish today or fish tomorrow. Like great foiling conditions are good fishing conditions a lot of times. So it is a lot of fun. I enjoy it, but I just don't get out there.
Yeah, that's
why
I haven't tried.
Really good leg workout though.
Yeah, that's why I haven't tried kiting. Friends are like, you have to, but I'm
exactly. I'm way more likely to foil than I am to kite. Because
those are the days like I'm not surfing because of the wind, and so if I'm doing all of those and have a family, then
yeah,
I'm done.
Yeah, the especially kiting. Like I hate sand. I hate when it's windy and sandblasting. Like that's not when I want to be at the beach. But I have judged some kiteboarding contests that Real used to do at the lighthouse. And watching those guys ride wave, like actually sitting there and watching instead of just like watching one casually while I was walking back up to paddle out or something. And watching them all day, I was like, dang, that actually looks super fun because like you just fly around this section and come up and just lay a massive hack. Like then you kind of like let the slack go and you can actually lay it on rail and surf it. I was watching Benny B do it one time. Like I was like, man, this is actually really sick. Again, like you, I'm like, oh, it's windy, sick. I can do work or like hang with my kids and catch up on stuff.
Yeah, I forgot Benny B was posting a lot of that at one point. Yeah, sharing as much as you do with your life on YouTube. You probably get like a lot of people that think that they know you.
Sort of. I mean, I guess in a sense, I feel like I've done a decent job balancing that with like, kind of when I started doing the weekly YouTube videos, my goal was to just document everything. It was like going to be my kids and my wife and the things we do and all this stuff. And then it just wasn't as natural. And I was finding myself like, I really like when I'm like with my family without filming it. And as time went on, I like kind of included them even less in the videos than I used to. And I guess to your point, had a desire to like have also the private side of my life, just in general, with a desire to like somewhat disconnect from technology. Like, I don't want to always have a camera there. I don't want to always be feeling like, I should film this. Like as like a editor and a videographer, like it's pretty hard to turn it off, because like you'll see light, you'll see shadow, you'll see like things happening. You're like, oh, that'd be a sick shot, and so when you're trying to document everything, like then it's even like exaggerated more, where like you just can't turn it off at all, and everything's a shot, and everything's just not as much in the moment, I found. And so I've been trying to like, which I think has like, I've almost gone like the complete opposite. I've been posting way less in the last year and a half, because I just kind of needed some time to restructure how I was doing it and how I wanted it to look. And I still want to just like be me and be personable and share everything, but like have my own life too that is like private.
No, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, back when I was like making my first films, I got obsessed with like, if there was a good sunset, I had to capture it, and it would like almost ruin my life. And I'm like, dude, it's just a sunset.
I think the thing that was like the biggest eye opener for me was when I went to Namibia last year. I went and I was like, I'm not going to make a vlog about it, because I'm currently working on a movie, and I wanted that to be its like own part. I wanted to actually have like a movie where I didn't put all the footage out on the internet right away. And I had been to Namibia 3 times before, and every single time I had a camera on my shoulder on the plane when I came off, in the car, like nonstop. And it was really wild to be landing and just taking in the scenery without thinking of shooting. Know that like kind of recognize like, hey, instinctually, like I'm like looking at all this, like the way the sand is blowing and the wind is and the sun is, and like I'm thinking of these shots. I see that flag moving, I'm like, oh, shot, whatever. It was just really cool to like walk down the stairs of the plane and walk on the tarmac and not be filming stuff and just be taking it in. Like, I hadn't done a surf trip like that really in so long, where there wasn't at least a camera on me. Like, I did the Surfline and O'Neill Maps to Nowhere trips the previous year, and even though I wasn't filming then, there were still cameras on me. So it was really special. I was like, it was a different feeling. And that whole trip, like as a whole, was super like reinvigorating to kind of my desire of like, okay, like that felt really good. But I do realize that like I also love sharing that with people. And I look forward to like kind of getting back into that.
Yeah, you brought up a bunch of stuff I was going to, so that's perfect. But how was that trip to Namibia?
It was the worst of the 4 I've done. So in saying that, it made me realize how hard I have scored going there.
Yeah.
I think before I ever went, Corey Lopez and I were planning to go for a couple years. And so he was kind of telling me what to look for, what storms you want, this and that. And so learning from the guy who was like one of the first guys to document it, be there and have it documented, was super special. And so I think, we scored that first trip. And then the second trip, when I went with Oliver Kurtz, it actually wasn't even numbers wise what I would typically go for. But at that point I had like made connections, and I'd met people, and I had guys that were like, no, dude, like it's going to be sick. And we went, and I remember I saw Koa Smith. I was like, dude, if he's here, like we're in. So like having done those 3 trips, and it basically was like better each time I went. Then when I went this past year, my expectations were just way too high, because the forecast was crazy for size and duration. I mean, we were going to have 5 days of Skeleton Bay, and it was going to be huge, like as big, if not bigger than the time I went in 2019. So it was just like my thoughts of like what I was going to do and what I was going to get were just beyond me. And then we got humbled because the sand is totally different than it used to be. And the first day, the numbers and everything and the angle and the swell was good. It just was like really hard and the wind was like a little worse. And then the next day, I want to say the wind or the swell was smaller, but the wind was better, but it was like not that big. Like guys were doing cutbacks and ripping waves. And I remember walking up the beach with Nate Florence and we were just like, what's going on? Like, this is not even look like Namibia. And then it got huge, and it would have been like, me and Bidgie Brandon Kosma said that would have been like the best Skeleton Bay ever. Because it was massive, and it was angled perfect. It was going the entire point, but the wind was dead on shore the whole day. We had, like, everyone pulled up at dawn, like literally first, like you barely see the waves. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's on. And it was big. I remember we watched this one wave barrel for like 40 seconds. I had this iPhone clip, thing just went. And before we could even paddle out, the wind went on shore. I think there was one guy that got out before it went on shore. And then it was on shore all day. And then the next day, the wind was bad. It was on shore. And then the final day, it was good. And there was crazy waves. You know, Koa and Benji got psycho ones. I think Koa got like the longest barrel of his life that day, but it was really crowded. I mean, there was a lot of good surfers there, and it was very user friendly. Like, it wasn't the times I went before when it would get low tide, it was like terrifying. Like, so it, as a wave would come down the point, it just weeds out all the guys who can't surf it. And then it, you know, only leaves like select guys who could even catch the wave because it was just like so upside down and gnarly. And this time it was very, very user friendly and inviting, even on like the bigger sets. And so it was super hard to get waves. But like, I'll look back at the year I went in 2019 with Rob and it was that big. And, you know, I don't know if I'll ever have a day of surfing like that again in my life. Like, it was just the things I saw and the waves I rode and the barrels I got, like that might have been the peak. And that's okay. Cause that was crazy. So
what is the, like, could you put me in the, like, you're in the lineup, you see the waves and everything, but like, I can't imagine like seeing the approaching waves. Could you kind of?
So there's two ways to go about it. There's two different types of sessions out there. One, the sessions in the fog where you can't see the wave coming, but you can hear it. And that is really eerie because it's like, you'll come over a wave and you basically see that there's a wall. So like, you kind of know there's another wave. Like the lines there are so long. Like, when you come over, you're looking at the face of the wave, but it's breaking like hundreds of yards up from you. And when it's foggy, you'll like come over and you can just hear it like you know if it's a heavy one and you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then it like reveals out of the fog. You're like, oh, I got it. Like,
Thomas Brothers Productions. If you've been enjoying the podcast or the videos we've been making through it, it's an extension of our video production company that we've been creating for the past 15 years. So if you have a brand, company, or a product, we make high-end commercials, storytelling documentaries, and compelling product videos that help your brand grow or get your story out there.
This episode is brought to you by Hurriali, serving nourishing treats for the mind, body, and soul. If you haven't heard the recent podcast, give it a listen. Learn the story of how they built Hurriali Gardens. It's a great story, and I did not know half of it. It's definitely our spot before or after a surf for a fresh juice, strong coffee, or fire breakfast burrito. And my new favorite is their healthy take on a banh mi. Hurriali Gardens, 401 Hugie Street, or their new location, Hurriali Riverland in James Island at 2016 Wapu Drive.
where do I go? Do I go in or out? And so like your timing of like deciding when to like paddle out or paddle in or start turn and go on the wave is like smaller because you're seeing it in half the amount of time. So that's like a wild feeling. I've only had that happen, I guess, twice. And the one time it was like really good, and it's intense watching that thing just reveal itself. And then the other one is just when it's, you know, clear out and it's big, and when it's big and low tide, it's a really scary wave. So like you'll basically come over and immediately you can see how stretched out the wave is, and you're like, okay, this is the one. And you look up and you're like, how do I get into that? Like, and immediately you're trying to figure out, like, do I paddle out? Do I sit here? Do I paddle in? Because the wave, even the big ones break kind of the same spot as the little ones. It's such a ledge until it gets a little bit bigger. And they're just so heavy. It's kind of like you'll see them and you're like, how, like how do I meet that speed and that girth coming down and like catch it? And there's some that like don't really let you in. But it is kind of funny, like as fast as the wave is moving and as heavy as it is, a majority of them, as long as you read it right and paddle at the right time, will let you catch them. And you don't need a big board to do it, which is weird. But you have to ollie down the face, basically. So it's super nerve-wracking. I mean, so many things are going through your head because, like, you know, if there's guys above you, you're sitting there like, okay, like, he might go, he won't, he might, he'll definitely go if he can get it. And then you kind of are waiting to see who, you know, some guys might take a dig at it, but you're just like, there's no way. And so then you can start going head down. But it's really hard when you got guys that, like, could maybe get it. And you know, like, there's really no way they're gonna get it from where they are, but like they're good enough surfers, like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, because like, dude, you can't burn somebody on what might be the wave of their life. Like that's just selfish. And so that's like your first thing, trying to figure out like who's above me, how far are they above me, can they make it, do they want it? And then once it's like up to you, it's like, okay, there's guys below me. Like, can I really get this? Because if I can't really get this, I don't want to screw it up for the guy that's just down the way who could. At least that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
I will say, watching guys out there, I don't think everyone looks at it that way, but I think that that's how it should be. It should be like, okay, do I realistically have a chance? Because if I'm going to just like, you know, full send on a wave I don't have much of a chance on, like I could be holding someone off from getting the 20-second barrel. Like, why would I do that? Like, I want to know I have like a good chance. So there's definitely been times where I've like been maybe a little out of position and like, oh, you know what? I think the guys below me are going to have a better chance. And so I'll let one go by. And then if they don't go, then the next one, I'm like, okay, I'm on the next one. But there's like, so for me, there's so many thoughts that go through my head, but really when those big scary ones come, there's very few people that want them. And even the guys that want them, like don't really want them, because they're like, you're going knowing that you can surf it and knowing that could be the wave of your life. But the thing is just so intimidating. It's like shaped like this. And so when you start going head down, it's like you're just paddling with all your might to stay underneath the lip. And the moment you stick the drop and get that bottom turn, then it's like you're cruising. Because like if you don't make it, you're at least in the barrel. But that's like the drop is the most critical part of the wave. Like once you do that, then like, you know, there's other parts that are hard to ride because it's like sucking below sea level or you got to speed up or slow down. But that's when the joy starts setting in. But that anticipation to catch it, it can be like pretty unnerving on the gnarly ones.
Yeah. Dang. What about, was that Joey's wave?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find a clip?
We never found a clip of the whole thing. I basically have a clip of him pulling in from up top from Jamie O'Brien's filmer, Jacob. And, I have a clip of him coming out from Timmy Ridenauer, and he was there with Koa Smith and Benji. And so I kind of spliced them together to give it to Joey, like, but we don't have, and it is, you know, I was able to match up like the foam balls and stuff, and so it's like spitting image, like time-wise, but it's just not the same as like watching the whole thing simultaneously. Yeah. I remember seeing that from the beach, and I couldn't actually see him come out. I was standing right near Jacob. You can hear me screaming on the clip. And I remember it was really scary that day. Not only because it was big, but because it was mostly because it was on shore. You know, like when you take a big wave and you make it unperfect and like chunky and dangerous, like it's just scary. And so that was like the terrifying part. Then on top of that, it was also some of the biggest, basically as big as skeleton bay handles. And, you know, there was only probably 6 guys trying at the time. And I was actually walking up the point. I was like, I'd finally decided like, all right, I've seen enough makeable ones. I'll go out now. Because before that, when like Nate and Koa and then went out and Benji, it was like not makeable. No one was making waves. It was the chandeliers were so bad. You just couldn't. Like, there's no amount of willpower that's going to get you through like a 10-foot chandelier section. And it was just cleaning up and I'm walking up to go out. And I was going to tell Joey and them I'm going out, and I look up and I see him paddling in. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's out there. And then he gets in so easy, and he takes this huge high line and starts pumping, and I see the wave starting to bottom out and grow as he's going into it, and it like, I'm like excited for him, like, oh my gosh, Joey. And then when it starts barreling and I see it getting even, it's like as he pulls in, it keeps getting even bigger and gnarlier. And then it like, I literally got scared. I don't know. There's not many times I've ever watched someone on a wave and like been scared for them. But I immediately clicked into like, oh my gosh, if something goes bad, like I gotta, like, how do I help? And I was scared, and then I'm watching, I'm like, oh, and then you hear the whole beach at the end of the point erupt and cheers, and you're like, holy cow, he made it. And it was like, it was so special. He came at the beach and we hugged, and like, it was just, he was tripping out. And that was really cool. I mean, that was the craziest barrel. You know, guys got longer barrels after that, but that was the craziest barrel anyone got the whole swell. Like he did that amongst, you know, a crew of elite tube riders.
Yeah, I just got chills just you telling that story. That's crazy. Is Skeleton Bay or Shelly Island, which one's actually better? Just kidding. No, I was looking.
Dude, what's really funny? Yeah, what's funny is I've posted Skeleton Bay clips and people are like, "Is that Shelly Island?" I'm like, "In what world?" Oh man, kidding. No, people have thought that. People have legit thought that.
What does it take for something like that to form? I mean,
shoot, it just time. Right now, like the point has eroded so much, we've lost like a mile or a mile and a half of beach out there. So, I mean, it'd be years before anything like that ever set up again. The point used to always, like if you go look at the Google Earth time lapse, like what a time lapse engine or whatever, you can go from like sometime in the 80s up till now. You'll see the point was always like the east facing beach came down and the south facing beach curved out to form like the hook on the, you know, southwest side. And now like that entire point has shifted, and now it's like the south facing beach is straight and then it hooks into the east facing beach. And it's, I mean, I can't imagine like the amount of cubic feet of sand that are gone. I mean, just miles and miles of sand is, I mean, it's around somewhere out there, because like you see the shoals pop up, and last couple summers we've had little islands pop up. It's like, this place is dynamic. It's gone through phases where the point eroded like that and then grew back, and I don't know what makes it do it. It's just, it's a shoal. So at some point it could change, but it seems so far away now because it's so deep out there. In years past, when the point eroded, it was still all really shallow. So even though the beach looked different, especially from the satellite, underwater, you know, it was like 5 feet deep, 4 or 5 feet deep for like a couple hundred yards out. Well, now it's like deep, you know, it's like 20 feet deep. So how does all that sand come back? I don't know if it's like a lack of nor'easters. I feel like we've had, you know, in the last like 6 years, a lot more east-northeast swells or east swells. We haven't had those, a lot of the northeast swells where, you know, years past or before, we would have seasons where it was like just northeast wind. And we've had a lot of northeast wind this winter, but not really northeast swell, like small swell. So I think it's those like bigger, just like proper northeast angles where it's like sweeping sand from down the beach out to there. But all the beaches have eroded too. So it's like, I don't know. But I think looking back, like I knew Shelly Island was like something special. I'd never seen it set up like that before. It had set up, you know, back in years past, there was, you know, the point would stick out and there would be a left out there, but it was always mushy and it was never very good. Shelly Island was like pretty much the best the wave had ever been. And especially that island was like a mile long or something, that whole hook. And I've never seen that in my whole life. There's been islands that have formed before. It's not abnormal for an island to form out there, but of that size, it's never been that big. And yeah, now I look back at the footage we got and, you know, all the sessions that went around to that, and it's like, whoa, that could never happen again. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That was crazy. You did mention Maps to Nowhere. That series was really cool. Man.
Oh, so sick.
It's probably a bad subject to talk on a podcast because you can't really say much about it.
No. Oh man, I have friends of mine that like get grumpy that I like won't tell anyone about any of it.
Yeah, that's the.
They're like, come on, man, I'm not gonna go there. I'm like, doesn't matter. Like, you might tell someone that could.
Are they doing any more?
believe so, but I haven't gone on any more trips. So I guess I'm not sure. I know that there are rumors and that it is possible. That guy Matt has tons of waves, so there's no shortage of places to go. But yeah, I haven't been a part of any, so I can't say with certainty. I've just heard rumors because, like I said, like I don't know the places that the other guys went that I didn't, and I never, like, I remember, where did I go? I was with so I went with Ian Crane to one of the places, and then he asked me where I went on the second one, and I was like, sorry, man. Like, I didn't tell him, like. And I went with like Corey Lopez and Tori Meister to one of the other ones, and they were asking where I went on the first one. I was like, sorry, boys.
Yeah. Wow, that's some real inner tangled.
Like, so I don't get included on ones that I'm not on, and it's just all hush hush. So
yeah. How sick was that beach break set, or all of the beach break sessions? That beach break was so nuts. Obviously East Coasters, we love sand bottoms, and I just love sand because it can be so perfect. Unless you're at like some perfect reef pass, like reef breaks in general, or coral or rock, has its imperfections. Like, people can say it all they want about how perfect it is in peeling, but the wave will have boils or ribs or fat spots or steep spots. But sand, when it's right and the swell's right, it's just like everything's perfect. And but at the same time, you have like the little bit of randomness to the way the wave comes in. And so that beach break that was like my dream setup. Just, you could get drained on a left, you could get drained on a right, you could do airs on the lefts, sometimes you could do airs on the rights. Like, it had everything. It wasn't very rippable because it was wedging so hard. Like, it was good for airs, but only once it got smaller. And once it got smaller, like, we were all kind of tapped out, and the last day we were kind of running out of time before we had to leave. And but man, it just, so many things wrapped up in like one wave, and just offered up. It was like a perfect playground. Yeah, I might go rewatch that episode again after this. That literally like kind of has like a classic feel to, like, almost like some of the drive-through movies or something. Like, that just had everything.
Yeah, man, it was cool. It's funny. I would have thought that video would have done better than the others because of its, like, like every surfer can relate to that feeling kind of. And, but it didn't. I think it was actually one of the worst performing ones. I guess when people want to fantasize, they want to fantasize about something that isn't attainable, like a reef pass or something.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd surf that wave. Sully Bailey was...
That wave was gnarly. I did hear stories about that wave. Ian Crane said it was so gnarly. He's like, dude, it ended on like a dry rock. Like, like, if
I don't fantasize about that.
It was pretty heavy. Yeah. That was not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. Dang. That's cool. So you have a movie coming out. I mean, it's still in the works. It is still in the works.
It's one of those things where, like, I basically had the idea like a year and a half ago. And then as time went on, I kind of like gained a better perspective of what a story I wanted to tell. And really, the story didn't even reveal itself until like last summer into fall. And then I wanted to include the Maps to Nowhere trips and some O'Neill trips I've done. So in October, I sent off some drives with guys to California to go amongst a couple different filmers to get footage back. And it took me like 2 months to get the drive. I didn't get the drives back till the beginning of January. So like for 2 months, I couldn't work on a huge part of the movie, like the travel section and the intro. And so since January, I've been working on it, and I've mostly been trying to dial in. Basically, I'm editing all the action sections, and then I'm going to come in and fill in the B-roll, and then come in and tell the story in between. The goal is to basically tell the story in like small increments between each section, because like I don't want to draw that all out. So I actually started like storyboarding yesterday what points I need to go to cross in each to kind of organize it. I've never made like a proper movie like this, but it's pretty cool. I'm really excited. I think do something different, do something I've never done. It's I've made highlight reels, obviously told stories through vlogs and stuff of travels or swells or whatever, but to actually write things out and like write a story is like a fun challenge for me. And so I don't really know. I literally was like, yeah, I plan to have it out in January. And I was like, all right, February. And then it was like March. And now basically like 2 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put it. This is why I haven't promoted it at all. Cause it's like, I don't want to put a time on it. Cause I want it to be done when it's done right. And I think it'll work out better because I do want to do a premiere. I don't plan on like traveling around doing premieres everywhere, but I do at least want to have one here. And it would be a whole lot nicer if the weather wasn't 40. So it's probably better I didn't do it in January, February. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's basically, just to run you through it because this part's whatever. But there's like the intro and opening to the movie, and then there's like the intro section that kind of highlights what is throughout it, and then there'll be a home section that is basically 2021 through 23. Then there's my travel section, which will include like all the O'Neill and Maps Nowhere trips I've done, because like there was clips of mine that weren't used in a lot of the edits.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually 2 parts, so it's kind of fun. It's like a tropics part, and then a Mexico part, which was basically just all step offs. But it's like, because those had a completely different vibe, I put it in like a separate song, like short song. And then a friend section, which actually I haven't even started editing. I need Jeffrey's help with that one. I basically want to have a section that's like all my buddies that I surf with, and like all their best waves. And that might not even necessarily be just clips from the last 2 years, or 3 years. That might be just their best clips ever. It's like, if I'm making a movie, like I might as well show their like best stuff. Like,
yeah.
And then it goes into the Namibia section, which is pivotal for like kind of the storytelling aspect of like where I was transitioning mentally. And then it finishes with fall 2023, which was like crazy run of hurricane swell, and the first hurricane season in years where like I didn't just put everything out in edits. So I have clips that haven't been online that no one's seen that I'm excited, like,
sick,
and found like basically it kind of culminates with like, with home. And then what's funny is then the outro like credit section is actually a session that happened during the fall that was like super special. It was like the biggest day that we got, so I separated that a little bit from the other fall stuff. But it's like,
cool.
Currently on the timeline it's like 33 minutes or something.
Yeah, I would love to come to that premiere. That'd be awesome. And then
I mean, I'm gonna give like a good heads up like once I have a better idea of a timeline. So
yeah, take your time. And then
because I want to promo, but I would say I'd be pretty surprised if I let it, or I feel like I would be struggling if I didn't finish it sometime in April.
There was one other thing that you guys get a lot of people visiting, a lot of people coming to surf. Like, what's the best way to respect, the locals? And
that's a great question.
Yeah, and
because it doesn't just apply for here; it just implies everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the main thing, and I'm going to steal some tips from Will Scudin because he shared this with, I forget who. He was down here last spring for the Big Wave Risk Assessment Group Summit. And it was good to see him again. And we were kind of talking about lineup stuff. And one thing that he shared, which I loved, is he's like, when I paddle out somewhere, he's like, when I'm in the lineup and once it's my turn, he's like, I always let, what'd he say, like 4 waves go by? Like basically like once he's up, he just sits there and like lets the other waves go, like to whoever else was in the lineup. Cause he's just like, just give, he's like, when you go out, give waves. He's like, don't go out with the intent to take waves. And, then you'll end up getting waves. But I think that's like important. I see it happen a lot at the lighthouse, because you have to paddle out by the jetty. You get out and you're up current from everybody. And, there are guys that live here who can just go on waves, like if like Cash or Joey or especially the older guys, like if it's not that big, like Kevin McCabe or whatever, if like the main local dudes paddle out and a wave comes to them, like, yeah, they're gonna go. Like, don't even think about going. But the worst thing is, I see this happen way too much, where like someone not from here gets out and is ahead of the whole peak, and then a set comes, and yeah, they're in position, but like only by like 15 feet. Like, you don't just go because like you're in the spot. Like even I, when I get out there, look down the lineup and I'm like, okay, like there's Cash, there's so and so, or there's like, maybe I see someone from up in town. I'm like, I know that he was waiting. Like, I caught a wave in and he was waiting. He's still waiting. Like, I'm not going to go above him. Like, that's just lame. Not to say that it never happens. Like, sometimes just you spaz and are selfish. But I don't think enough people paddle out and analyze a lineup and see who's in it, see who's been pay attention to who's waiting, pay attention to who like the main dudes are. You can always tell by who's the loudest. He's typically and the most confident in the lineup. And it's like, you know, when you go out there, just go immerse yourself in the lineup, hang out, watch. And, you know, after a couple sets come by, like try and figure out how you're going to navigate and get your waves without like bumming anyone out. Cause like I think the thing that makes me want to like give waves to other people the least is when I see that person paddle out and flip on the first wave that comes. I'm just like, you're not even thinking of the rest of anyone out here. I think like people that wait the longest, like, yeah, you earn waves that way, even whether you're local or not. It's just, I never will understand. And I feel like because I know that like they're gonna go.
No, it's good to have the conversations though, and people just, the main takeaway I got though is, yeah, just really assess the lineup before you just start taking waves. Another one would be, I mean, going to a different spot too. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
or just moving down the peak. Like even Jesse Hines. When Jesse Hines paddles out of the lighthouse, ever since I was younger, he's always done this. He paddles out. He does not sit at the top. Sometimes, if there's not a lot of guys or it's like gnarly enough where like he's going to be able to go on waves that other guys won't. He sits down the beach. He's like, I just let you guys do your thing. He's like, I don't care to mix it in. And he still gets really good waves. And sometimes he actually scores harder because down the beach is better. Like, it's just, he recognizes that there's like a crew of guys at the lighthouse, and he's going to move away from them and he'll get his own waves. And, you know, I mean, that's like the same thing I do at Pipeline. Like, that's how I ended up getting waves at Pipeline, was like, I did not paddle out and sit with the crowd. I sat on a different section of the reef, where I learned that when a certain angled wave came in, it would break there and it would miss the crowd and they would be too far on the shoulder. So it was like, yeah, sometimes I was waiting an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to catch one wave. But when that one wave came, I had been waiting and I was free to go. And like, those guys weren't going to like burn me either, because they weren't in a good position and they could tell that I'd been waiting the whole time, because it's like pretty obvious that I wasn't catching waves, because you have to paddle back through the lineup to get there. And so it was just like, I learned like, okay. And the same thing at like Rocky Point. I would paddle out there. I surfed there enough. I recognized like who the loc dogs were, who was going to go regardless, who was going to get mad if you went behind them. And it's like, there's tons of waves, other waves coming in. Sometimes like you have to regulate yourself to catch the insiders or the double ups or the wide ones or something. Like, there's, in every lineup, there's like those rogue waves coming where like the main guys are going to miss them, and like the local guys. And so finding that and figuring that out, like, it's just reading the lineup and kind of putting yourself below everyone else and being okay with that. Like, you know, I just think that people who, you know, you never know, like some of those guys that are at the top of the pecking order in all their local spots around the whole world, you have no idea their work schedule. You have no idea their life schedule. If you're there visiting, they might be there for their 1 hour window or their 30-minute window or something, or they've had a horrible work week or whatever. And like, you're visiting on vacation or for a swell. Like, dude, let the guy get his wave at his spot and go home or go to work or whatever he has to do for the day. Because you just don't know. So that's how I look at it.
There's so many people surfing, which is awesome, but there's plenty of spots and down the beach for everyone to get waves.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't think being aggressive about it is helpful either, because then people just get mad, and then the person who like needs to earn the respect then has no respect for the other person. So why would they try to, you know what I mean? It like just like creates this barrier, and nothing is ever better. Like, to me, having the conversation's better. And maybe that's where, like, in the generation of technology now, it makes more sense to, you know, have those conversations or make those posts or those videos or whatever that help people. But I think just having the talks in the lineups, like when I see even some of my friends like getting bent out of shape, I'm like, dude, calm down. It's not a big deal. Like, it's one wave.
Yeah. YouTube, fishing. What else do you have coming up? Any plans?
My focus right now is just the movie. I basically was trying to, I think in the last couple months, I've been balancing like YouTube videos in the movie. And so then I'm having like a worse progress on the movie, and then also not putting out as great a YouTube video. So I basically have put YouTube stuff kind of on the back burner until I finish the movie. And then once I finish the movie, you know, plan to do more regular content. And I've changed the way that I'm going to put it out. It's not going to be like a weekly, like cinematically edited vlog. I realized that wasn't sustainable for me. So there will probably be more short form stuff that's like session based, or even just raw, and then save like the crisply edited videos for those good swells, you know, the ones that matter.
Well, dude, thank you so much.
Man, it was good to chat.
Yeah, this was awesome. Yeah, hopefully I'll be there for the premiere, and if not, we'll get together again and hopefully collaborate on something one day. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. I know. It's funny. I came across the folder of all the footage that you shot when you were here back in, I think the one time it was like Fisher and I were filming for the Smith grudge match, and you came up to film with us. And that was like, I was stoked on like that little period in time, because it was like right when I had like re-signed with O'Neill that year, and was just trying to like, that was like kind of the peak of like trying, from then to like 2018 was like the peak of like trying to make a name for myself. I remember like Fisher and I were pushing each other so hard, and like there's just so many gnarly like air wipeout clips from us trying to stick stuff. Like I like going through all that footage.
Yeah.
I had that one massive alley oop that I almost landed. I like stuck it and slipped. I'll never forget that.
Dude,
That's such a bummer.
Yeah, that was crazy. Those were fun. Fisher's the man.
He's a good dude. He rips too. Now he's the North Shore look dog now.
Yeah, dude. Seriously, thank you so much. This was really fun. I know people will enjoy it.
Yeah, man. Had fun talking, chatting, catching up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, see you up here.